after a conversation with a client, I literally make notes about what we discussed. Because sometimes if you just depend on your memory, you can forget things. And then what I do is I keep track of all these notes, then I look at common themes. And it's almost like I didn't have to convince the client. It's like the client was already telling me what they wanted. And so I was developing a product that was already what they wanted. I think it's really about listening to what the client wants and then designing a product on those guidelines, along those lines.
Welcome back, Action Taker. This is the After Hours Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Mark Savant, and this is your guide to generating six-figure years. Woo! Excited to have you here with us today because we've got Krishna Rajendran in the house, in the Hizzy for Shizzy, and he is the founder of Karallief. And what he does, what his company does, is sell premium ingredients, blended ingredients, we'll talk about that, to supplement companies. And this was a really fascinating look for a few reasons. A, we're going to be talking about how Krishna grew up in India and moved to the US and kind of what that experience was like. And we're talking a lot about sales, how to sell your idea, to customers, to clients. And in Krishna, we're talking a lot about how he sells to big organizations and some of the strategy that goes into that. So listen, you and I both know it. Six figures is a big deal. And you're going to need to make some sales. And that is surprisingly what we really focus in on in this episode. So thanks for being here. Thanks for subscribing, and sit back, relax. We're going to get into a really dope episode with Krishna, and you are going to learn a lot. I know I did. Thanks for being here, DJ. Run the tape. Krishna, what's up?
Hey, Mark, how's it going?
Krishna, I'm awesome. I am excellent. And I can't wait to talk to you today, hear more about your company, Karallief, and your story as well. So I'm excited. You've got a fascinating story. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, thanks, man. You're really kind. I'm excited to talk to you today as well.
Rock and roll. So first, Krishna, before we get into the content, we're here in a video chat here, and I'm looking at the back wall. You've got a calendar with Post-its on it.
Yeah.
I got to ask, as a business owner, how important is it that you're maintaining, managing, and reviewing your calendar regularly?
Oh, it's probably the most important thing, especially as this is something that I give advice to young entrepreneurs when they're starting off. Be organized, be planned, because things can get chaotic pretty quickly, and it invariably does in entrepreneurship. So it's very important to have a calendar so that you have an idea of, okay, what's coming up, or, what are your deadlines, and, just to plan out everything properly.
Nowadays, everything is electronic though, right? I've got everything on my electronic calendar. You actually have a physical calendar there with Post-its. Do you find that makes it easier for you to manage your schedule?
I think the electronic calendars are good, but I think there's just so much of distraction when it comes to like technology nowadays. Like you could have your phone and you'd have like 1,000 apps on your phone, and it just causes so much of confusion. And I'm kind of like old school in some ways, in the sense that I do like the physical stuff. So I like having like a physical calendar. And sometimes when I'm doing calculations also, like I'm used to writing it out and then kind of working it out. And like even in terms of reading books and everything, I prefer more of a physical book rather than like an ebook. I think it just reduces the distraction. It keeps you focused, you're zoned in, and it keeps you in line with what you need to do.
I love that point. We were actually talking about this just this past week in the pro group that I run. We're looking at being more productive with our time, looking at our schedule, looking at our calendar. And one of the members said, hey, that method just isn't great for me. And he shared a productivity wheel, which is just kind of a different way of looking at your daily schedule. It's not just like a list of what you're going to do and what time, but rather a more visual look, a more artistic look.
Yeah.
Because I think we all learning different ways.
Right. Absolutely. And it's
why not figure out what our best way is and go from there, right?
Exactly. And that's the whole point of experimentation, right? You try out different ways and then you see which one works for you. And so I think what works for me is having a balance between like the electronic stuff and also like the actual physical stuff, because I actually have like different color post-its, even like, depending on whether or not there's like a deadline or something very serious coming up, it's like a red color post-it. I'm like, that gets my attention. When I walk into the office every day, I'm just like, oh, okay, that's on my radar. Like, I can't let go of that. So, yeah.
I like that. I have a big whiteboard up here and I'm always writing notes, putting posts on it, different color writing as well. So like you said, there's a reason why stop signs are red, people.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
It catch, it,
Pay attention. Like, you have to know what's going on. Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of psychology that goes
Yeah.
into that. And the other advantage, I think, of making things more visual and in front of face, I'll give you a quick example. All the listeners out there, my first podcast, my first community that I built up was called the Awesome Dad Group. It's all about being a great father. But you get so caught up in the day-to-day stuff. I forgot to plan for Father's Day. So I wake up one day and it's like, oh, it's Father's Day. Oh,
I know.
if you're like, so is there an example of like a big day in the year for you in Karallief?
I would say like typically around some of our biggest trade shows, because we spend a lot of time going to trade shows, pitching our products there, and meeting clients over there. So, and typically all my red marked ones are the ones with like trade shows, the big ones. And I'm out on the road maybe like once a month, just within the US and globally as well. And it's like those trade show days are very important, and especially the 2 weeks leading up to a trade show when everyone's setting up meetings, you can never forget those days. So it's just like I have it on my digital calendar, I have it on my physical calendar. I'm like, never forget those days. It's like,
Yeah, and if you don't have it in front of your face, it's very easy to forget that stuff.
it's very easy. And especially with the phone, right? Like, I mean, I used to have like rely on my phone to give me all the updates and everything, like calendar updates. And then I have so many apps on my phone, like I love to work out. So I have like a fitness app on my phone, I have health apps, I have news apps, social media, whatever, like everything. And so you have like, you check your phone, you have like 100 notifications. And so you're like, oh, I have so many notifications. It's so confusing. I don't know which one's important, which one's not important. So it's very important to prioritize and focus.
Yeah, because if you don't, your business ends up running you. You don't run your business, right? That's
totally.
We don't want that. Before I go too far off the rails here, Krishna, I want to kind of back it up because you have a very interesting story in that you were born and grew up in India.
Yeah. Yeah. Right? So, yeah, I was born, grew up in India. I lived in a really cool city called Bangalore in India, which is called the Silicon Valley of India. And it's a really cool city because it's very cosmopolitan. So you have a lot of these big companies, multinational companies setting up a base there. And so it really gave me a lot of exposure to the rest of the world and what's happening around the world. It really made me curious about the rest of the world. And it sparked the interest in me to want to have like a global business, to work with clients from around the world, to have a business that can impact the lives of people around the world, not just in one country. So, and that's why I came to the US, because of just the exposure and just working with so many interesting people from everywhere. And yeah,
that's one of the cool things about technologies is it's helped to connect us for people. A lot of my team is overseas.
Yeah.
Right. And they're awesome. And one of the questions that I have, a lot of our listeners too overseas trying to make it happen. I gotta ask here, what was it like moving from India to the US? Was it a huge culture shock? Did it take you a while to adjust, or was it just like you already were kind of ingrained in it due to where you were growing up in the Silicon Valley of India?
I think it was a lot more easier than I thought it would be, because so growing up, so my parents, they started a business together, and in that business we used to have a lot of clients from all over the world. So I always had like this really interesting exposure to different cultures and people from different countries just right from a young age. And so I love to travel also. So just from a personal perspective, I used to travel all over the world. And so kind of moving to the US was a very seamless transition for me. It felt more like, oh, okay, India was nice and US is also nice, and it's not too different. It's not too much of a change. And it was actually quite seamless. It wasn't hard at all for me. And I mean, I'm lucky in the sense that I got that exposure, right, from a young age. I know a lot of people don't necessarily get that level of exposure, so I'm quite lucky in that way. And having had that exposure, it was quite a seamless move for me. It wasn't challenging, it wasn't too different or anything of that sort.
Well, and you grew up with a lot of education there in India, right? You got
Right.
your undergrad there in India.
Yep.
Was it always the plan to move to the US and go to a big college like MIT, Harvard, or how did you make that decision? How did you even get to the point where you were able to make that decision?
Yeah, so I've always been, I think, just growing up from a young age, and both my parents are entrepreneurial, so I had that entrepreneurship in my blood, so to speak. Like I was always wanted to do something interesting, something big, and something on my own where I can take accountability and I wake up doing something that I'm passionate about. Like when I wake up in the morning, I'm energized. I'm like, wow, okay, this is an exciting new day. Let's meet some new clients. Let's travel the world. Let's do something interesting. So I've always had that in my, in my blood, in my DNA, and I always wanted it to be more global. So and because I just loved meeting people from different cultures, and I wanted to create like a product or service, something that would span the globe, and something that would allow me to meet people from different countries. Because just even on a personal level, that's a big part of who I am. I love exploring and learning about new cultures, trying out new food, speaking different languages. I just love all of those things. So I knew I wanted to do entrepreneurship, but I also knew I wanted to do it on a more global scale where I could get exposure to different people from different countries. And coming out of grad school and business school, I realized that that kind of a job didn't exist. So I'm like, okay, it doesn't exist, so I'll just create it myself. Because your work is something that you're going to be doing for the next 50, 60, 70 years of your life, right? And so you want to do something that you feel energized about, something that you feel passionate about. You don't want to wake up feeling like, oh, I hate work, I don't like to go to work. And people ask me, like, do you take time off, do you take vacations? I'm like, when you love your work, like every day is like a holiday, every day is like a vacation. Like I actually love what I do. So I mean, and I'm very passionate about what I do. So yeah.
Yeah, it makes life a lot easier. I'll tell you what, I
Yeah.
spent probably the last 15 years, 10 years just loathing Mondays. I hated Mondays because that meant I had to go do a job I didn't enjoy, I didn't get any satisfaction out of. Just a few months ago, I was able to build up my podcast agency to a point where I was able to leave the day job. To your
Yeah.
point,
There you
now
go. Yeah.
now it's like, oh, it's Friday. Oh
It's like I can't
gosh.
believe the work week is over, that's too soon. Like, yeah.
I just look back at all the missed opportunities. What could I have done better? What could I have gotten more done? And that, my friends, that's the goal. That's where you want to get. You want to get to that goal that Krishna's talking about, where you wake up energized every day because your life is better, your family's life is better, your client's life is better. You can just make the world a better place. So I do want to kind of stay on this for a moment here, Krishna. You knew you grew up in an entrepreneurial household. You knew you wanted to impact the world on a global scale. What was the first business that you started? Did you start small or did you start big? What was the first business you started?
So the first business that I started was the business which I'm running now. So I've only ever started one business,
Good.
and it was. I mean, we started off small because it's like, and it was more of like an idea, more of like a, I know I like this, but is there like demand for this? I have no clue. So, in when I was doing my MBA in my second year of business school, I was talking to a few of my professors saying, I know all my classmates want to become consultants, investment bankers, they're going to do it on that path. But I was telling my professor, I'm just like, I don't know if that really appeals to me. I want to do my own thing. I want to create a product or service, and I want ownership. I want accountability for it. And and so I worked with a few of my professors to just develop a business plan, just to kind of, start slow. And luckily, I was able to find like one client for my business even before we launched. And that made a huge difference because, and I know that's not always easy for like new entrepreneurs to find a client right off the bat, but it's something that if you can even get some level of interest, something if you can develop even on a small scale, it makes a huge difference because you want to have a little bit of cash flow starting in the business right off the bat. Otherwise, it just, you're forced to spend a lot of time raising money and doing other kinds of things. Now, raising money, I'm not against it or anything, but you want to focus on your actual business. Like raising money doesn't really help you. I mean, it helps your business, but you're not really selling. You're spending a lot of time that's not focused on selling your business, developing your brand. And so, if you can kind of bootstrap it and get started off, even on a small scale, I highly recommend that. And so, I've not raised any money. I've not done anything of that sort. So my approach is more like, see if I could get like a client interested in the thing before we launch, and that made a huge difference. And yeah, that's
How
how we
did you
started.
how did you land that first client? Because I mean, especially when you're trying to get to that 6-figure mark,
Yeah,
you need clients, you need
yeah,
money,
yeah,
like bills need to be paid,
right.
and that's one of the biggest challenges that we have is how do I even get a client? Is it on LinkedIn? What's the secret sauce? Do I go to social media? Am I sending out direct mail? Am I phone calling? So I'm always interested to hear this. How did you land your first client, Krishna?
Yeah, I would say a big part of it is building relationships. So I've been in this industry for about, prior to starting this, I've been in this industry for about 7, 8 years. And I think, and it's something that's not talked about enough, I feel, like building relationships with people and building relationships that go beyond just like the professional. Like when I talk to my clients, I'm just like, hey, tell me about your kids, tell me about your dog, tell me about what you like to travel, tell me about your sports team. And I think just genuinely, like, almost building like friendships, I would say, and just genuinely liking people in general. Like, I mean, I love my clients, like, not just from the business perspective, but they're just really cool people to talk to, such interesting stories. And I think building those relationships over time, staying in touch with them, that makes a big difference. Because one of the clients that we landed initially was somebody who I'd known for a few years, and somebody who I'd been in touch with, somebody who knew what I'm capable of, and what strengths I have. And so there was that level of trust that was built up, and I think that made a big difference. And it's something that, like, even after the business was launched, right, one of the things that I love to do is like LinkedIn. We have the sales navigator for LinkedIn, and I reach out to people, reach out not from a perspective like, hey, I have this product, are you interested in buying like that, but more like, I don't know, it's so aggressive. Like when people talk about sales, right, it's just like, you don't have to be aggressive to sell something. If you create enough value, the product will sell itself. And people don't like it when somebody's aggressive and trying to sell them something. So what I come at it is more from a perspective of, hey, what kind of things are you interested in? Maybe we have something right now for you, or maybe we don't, but let's stay in touch, let's build that connection. So I think spending more time on building connections as opposed to trying to evaluate based on numbers, right? Saying, okay, I built 5 connections, but none of these connections converted this year. So what is the dollar value of sales? Like zero. I don't look at it like that. I'm like, you can't put a price on relationships. The relationships could turn into something huge in the future, but build those relationships. Don't make it about money. Make it about genuinely connecting with people and showing them what you're about. And it's crazy, Mark, the number of people who have reached out to me 2 years after I connected with them and saying, hey, Krishna, I remember I spoke to you that day 2 years ago. You told me this about this product, and I wasn't interested in it back then, but I'm interested in it now. Could we have a call right now? Like, I love it, you know and that's how it should be. Like for me, sales is more of like inquiring what the other person wants and having a genuine discussion. Sometimes you have a product that they don't like, and that's okay. Doesn't mean you have to burn that relationship altogether. Build relationships. I think that's the key.
That's something I'm learning more and more in my journey, my entrepreneurial journey is, I think that inherently we all know that, which is amazing to me because so many people make this mistake. Nobody likes to be sold to, but we still just go around trying to sell everything to everyone. I don't understand that. It's like, but if you're doing this out there, I got to call you out. If you're meeting someone for the first time on LinkedIn and you're sending them a big wall of text and a link to go to your website, just please don't do that.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Nobody likes that.
Nobody likes that.
No, so just, it doesn't work. Stop doing it. It doesn't work. Be authentic. And to your other point, I was talking to Chris Do the other day, the founder of The Future, great guy. And when he talks about sales, it's not about talking, it's about listening.
Yeah.
Because people will give you clues. They'll tell you what they want, and then you just tell them that you can solve that problem and you can give it to them. Or maybe if you can't solve it now, you can develop a solution to that problem.
Yeah.
Right. So I do want to kind of stay on for this for just another moment, Krishna. So this person that your first client for your company. I want to talk about your client and development, or your product and the development there. How did you reach out to that person? Did you reach out to just your entire network? Did you just say, hey, I have a specific fit with this specific customer? How did you actually get that person to agree?
It was actually interesting because it goes back to your point about listening, right? And sometimes, like, I just wish more people listen. And sometimes what I like to do is, like, after a conversation with a client, I literally make notes about what we discussed. Because sometimes if you just depend on your memory, you can forget things. But I literally have so many post-its everywhere because I take down notes saying, oh, it was interesting that the client said this. I wasn't expecting this. The client said point 1, point 2, point 3. And then what I do is I keep track of all these notes, then I look at common themes. And it's almost like I didn't have to figure out I didn't have to convince the client. It's like the client was already telling me what they wanted. And so I was developing a product that was already what they wanted. Like, I didn't go out creating a new product, creating something totally different and then trying to sell them. I was like asking them, hey, what kind of products do you like? What do you care about? And one of the things that clients always say is, so we sell herbal ingredients, like plant and food ingredients, which are put into supplements. And one of the things that my clients kept saying is, we want clinical studies. We want human clinical studies for these products. We don't want to go on historical usage or traditional usage. We want modern scientific evidence backing these products. So it's something just to keep in mind. I'm like, oh, okay, one client said this, two clients said this, three clients said this. And then I had so many clients who said this. And then, okay, maybe we should do that. Maybe let's invest in studies. Let's do those studies. And so I think it's really about listening to what the client wants and then designing a product on those guidelines, along those lines. I know some people have a different approach in terms of, like, they say, like, oh, I know the market. I know there's going to be a huge demand for this product, like kind of like the iPhone, right, in 2007. Nobody knew that we wanted smartphones back in 2007. But Steve Jobs was like, oh yeah, I think the whole world's going to want iPhones in 2007. And then he created demand that didn't even exist. And that's also a great approach. But what worked for me is, like, seeing demand, but seeing, like, the specific aspects of demand rather than saying, oh, high quality. What does high quality even mean? It could mean so many things. But getting more specific details. Oh, what do you mean by high quality? Okay, you want a study. What kind of a scientific study do you want? What kind of evidence do you want? And then building up on those fronts and then pitching the products to them after that.
It's a lot easier to sell when you already have a solution. With the client already knows that they have a problem. I'll tell you that much.
Right.
When you have to try to convince the client that they have a problem, your job is a lot more difficult.
It is so hard. And a big part of that is also sometimes accepting defeat. Like, I've worked with clients, we worked with them for 2-3 months, and then they're like, after the end of that is like, no, we don't want your product. I'm like, fair enough, no problem. We can't impress everyone, we can't please everyone. And I think sometimes accepting defeat is also, like, not the worst thing in the world, because you want to prioritize your time and energy on people who value what you offer. If somebody wants something different, you can try a little bit, but then, to your point, right, if you have to convince them so much, it's probably not a good idea. It's probably better to just, move on to somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't go around telling everybody, you need a podcast. People come to me and they say, Mark, I want a podcast. I want the social media presence. I want to build know, like, and trust. I want more clients. I say, okay, cool. I can solve that problem. And I think that's why great salespeople, great marketers, speak to problems, right? You speak to the problem within the context of the person that's looking for that. You know, I don't have a website, I need a website. Well, you have a problem, you need a website that looks good. Here's how we can build that out for you, right? What the other part of this though, right, is standing out. So you're aware of this as well, Krishna, that there's a lot of companies out there that are doing supplements, extracts, protein. Gosh, my trainer trying to push protein shakes on me like they're going out of style, right?
Yeah.
Like, I love you, Andrew, but come on with the shakes, man. Um, so you got to find a way to stand out, right? How did you develop a product and market it in a way that helped you to stand out, that helped you to really hook people and stand out in the noise?
I would say it's very risky to like. I mean, it's like, I think first thing is, as we've been touching upon, is like paying careful attention to what the customer is saying, what matters to them. But I think secondly, it just takes some courage and guts to do it. Like, I mean, I think like sometimes I feel like some entrepreneurs, they know what to do, but it's still risky to take that chance, right? What if, because in entrepreneurship, if you get it wrong, you're finished. Like, you bankrupt, you shut down the company. There is a bigger risk in entrepreneurship than if, like, say, if somebody's working for a big company, you take a chance, it doesn't work out. Okay, this company has like billions of dollars. Nothing happens to the company. But in entrepreneurship, every decision makes a difference.
Can
So
you, I'm kind of curious, Krishna, was
yeah.
there an example? Is there a time that you made a decision that didn't work in your journey? Like, I want a specific, give me a story about, we tried to roll out this product, it didn't work. What's something that you tried that didn't work and how did you recover from that?
In my current job, you're saying, or just any time you're saying? In this
It could be
current
any
thing?
business, but I want to hear, because that's important, right? There's, to your point, it's really easy to get in our own heads and think, if I screw this up, my life is over. But a lot of times that's not the case. What's a risk you took that didn't work out and how did you recover from that?
Yeah, so I would say like, I think, my gosh, there's just so many like things. Well, I mean, with entrepreneurship, like failure is just a part of life. Like, you can't get like too worked up about it. And, um, I would say in terms of risks, so one of the things, so as I mentioned, right, we sell herbal ingredients. And in this food supplement industry, there are two approaches. One is you either do a single ingredient for a particular, supplement, or the other approach is combining different ingredients. And combining different ingredients and creating a blend is much more of a novel approach. It's much more something new, which not too many companies have done. So that's super risky. So actually, let me back it up. So you have single ingredients, right? In single ingredients, you have companies that do clinical studies and other companies that don't do clinical studies. So initially, I was thinking, okay, what if we take like common products, like single ingredients, which everyone knows about, and we do human clinical studies on them, or we do basic studies on them to see if the clients are interested. Now, we invested money to do, basic studies on these single ingredients. We invested quite a bit of money on it, and it didn't work out because it was too similar to products that were already in the market. It wasn't different enough to create a splash, right? It wasn't like different enough to be like sexy. It wasn't different enough to be like, wow, okay, that's a revolutionary product. And so even though I was trying to be different, I was still too similar to what was already in the market. So my sense is the consumers were like, oh, okay, what your product, big deal. It's so similar to this. It's not really interesting. And so that didn't work out. So then what I realized was, okay, we need to take even more of a risk and go even more novel, like abandon these single ingredients and focus more on blends. It was risky, like, because we're going even more away from what the consumer usually knows and is used to. But then that approach worked because that was even more of a risk. And in that way, we were a lot more differentiated than what was in the market. Because in the market, you have a single ingredient which has no clinical studies. So we went to a single ingredient with studies, and then we pivoted to like a blend with studies. Now, a blend is a lot more complex because you need to identify how these ingredients work together. Is there any benefit to combining them? So it requires a lot more research,
Mm.
but that made a huge difference because when we pitch these products to companies, they're like, okay, that is interesting. We haven't seen that. We can create like a consumer marketing campaign to sell this product, to raise awareness about this product because you're sufficiently different and you're operating in like a relatively less crowded white space, so we can take a risk on you because you're different. We're not saying it'll definitely work, but we don't mind investing in it because you have something that's unique which we have not seen before. And so that worked out. But initially what we did was we tried to be different, but we were still too similar to what was already there. So then we had to go completely to the other side. Okay, you know the
I
training
like
wheels
that.
are off. you know
You didn't niche down enough, but you listened, you learned, and then you
yeah,
niche down another level so you could
niche on another
differentiate.
level. Yeah.
Well, and your clients, Krishna, you're not really doing B2C, you're going B2B, right? So you're
Right.
providing these ingredients to big businesses,
Right.
to big supplement companies so that they can create better products there, right?
Exactly. So we basically give them like the functional ingredient that they put into like a capsule or like a beverage. And the companies that we sell to are like finished product manufacturers. So they make capsules, they make beverages and things like that. But quite often they are very reliant on us for all the scientific data and for even like claims that they could make about products. They actually depend on us in a lot, which was quite surprising, because I initially thought, I'm like, oh, these big companies have like an army of lawyers and regulatory experts. Like, why would they need our help with make what claims to make to consumers? But, you know,
I would assume you include that in your pitch to these companies. You say,
oh
hey,
yeah,
look, we've got this
absolutely,
infrastructure scientifically proven, right?
yeah,
That probably means you can 10x your selling costs. Because to your point, like
yeah,
attorneys are expensive. I know some people that are in the supplement market, and it's like like you're getting sued all the time.
yeah. I mean, it's crazy expensive. Like it's just yeah, and that's why like I kind of like this approach where I wrote an article about this, basically saying we don't want to be seen as a supplier. We want to be seen as an ingredient partner. And
Mm.
there's a big difference between being a supplier and a partner. As a supplier, you can always get replaced. It's more of a price competition, a price war. But when you're a true partner, when your systems and processes and your team is so well integrated with your customers' systems and processes, it's a lot more stronger. And it's not just going to go away just because of some price thing. And especially during the pandemic, this made a big difference because there was so much chaos in like supply chains in the pandemic, right? Like everything was just restricted and like shipping costs went through the roof. There were so many delays and everything. And so it really like our customers appreciated that we were so close to them because we were still able to deliver products to them on time, and it was a very reliable supply. But that's because we were more selective about our customers. We're like, we'd much rather have closer relationships with maybe 5 6 customers rather than try to work with, I don't know, hundreds of customers. And i think I think sometimes having too many customers is also a bad thing, as contradictory as that sounds coming from somebody in sales. but but I think that's true. You want to be close to the customers that are your good customers, and you don't want to spend a lot of time with diluting your efforts.
Well, it dramatically changes and complicates your operations. You need more employees and HR and management, like
Yeah,
more systems. Like it's way easier to manage a team of 10 than it is a team of 1,000.
yeah, absolutely.
Right. And I also think that's why I really like the approach of moving towards more of a value-based pricing model. We're a partner, we're an ingredient partner. We're not just supplying you with the cheapest product because like you said, you're very easily replaceable. And so I think about this a lot in my business. I run an agency, and it's much easier. It's going to be, I start to scale up my agency, I recognize that like as I bring on more clients, it dramatically increases the amount of time I need to spend. It dramatically increases the cost of the softwares that I use, the amount of employees I need to, to keep pinning that point down. But what I'm more focused on, and what I think entrepreneurs can look more at, is how can I provide more value to the clients that I have so that I can charge a higher price because I can deliver more value,
Right.
right? The more
Exactly.
that way you don't need 100 clients, you can stick to 10
Yeah.
and you can still have, you know, the same revenue and better profit margins at that point. One of the things that I'm interested though in your case, Krishna, is you're like one client to you could be a huge sale,
Right.
right? We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars
Right.
potentially. How are you landing big accounts like that? Like, are you just like calling the CEO and be like, hey, Bill, you know, it's time that you get a better ingredient partner. Like, how are you actually connecting with these big sales? What's the process look like?
Yeah, so the sales process is, as you can imagine, when you have like bigger accounts, it takes time. This isn't like like we don't, I don't know, sign up 10 new clients a day or something like that. So it's a process that takes, I would say, about a year, like the entire sales cycle. And so it's very involved, and and with the sales cycle, it's also not just about talking to one person, it's like talking about multiple people who need to sign off, because it initially our sales process starts off with us pitching the product to somebody in the research and innovation team, like a scientist,
Mhm.
because we are a science data driven company. So we start off with the science, so we go to like somebody in the client who's science focused. And so once the scientific innovation person says, okay, this is interesting, let me think about it, so then they analyze the data themselves, and then they compare it to other products that they are currently evaluating. And then once they say, okay, it's an interesting enough product, then it gets handed off to like somebody in quality control or quality assurance who reviews all our documents, paperwork, and make sure we have all the certifications, everything in place. Then it goes to somebody in purchasing. And then you have lawyers involved at every stage when we sign different contracts, like non-disclosure agreements, letter of intent, MOUs, all those things. And then finally the purchase is made. And typically for like large accounts, like the purchase also has to go to the CEO and get his or her approval. And so it's a long process, and I think it's really about building those relationships everywhere, and 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 really being able to convince every single person in the step, because if one person in the chain is not convinced, it's not going to move forward. And so we've had situations where, like, we may be able to convince the research person, but then when it goes to like purchasing, they're like, oh wow, this is just too expensive, there's no way we can afford this. Or sometimes it could even get caught up in like with legal stuff with lawyers, right? Because some of the big brands that we work, right, they're like huge companies, and they have so many conditions that they put on suppliers like us, right? Like, even though we want to be partners, they treat us as suppliers. And then they're like, no, you have to conform to this. Sometimes it's like, it's nice to have land a big client, but sometimes you have to know your boundaries also. Like, okay, I can't comply with so many things. I need to have you're putting so many conditions on me. I can't move forward with this. So sometimes we have to say no. Like, this is one huge client that I had to say no to about a year ago. This big client wanted to put our products into ice cream, and then they wanted to make it huge. And everything was great until it came to the legal, whatever, the contract that they wanted to sign with us. And I was devastated to say no to that account. I'm like, how could I say no to that? But then I just knew that the things that they were asking for were just not possible for us. Like, that much of so many constraints and restrictions, it was just too much. So,
So did you get some red flags from that experience to say, hey, based on what I experienced here, I know next time I need to avoid these common denominators?
yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, and I think because like new entrepreneurs who are starting out, like sometimes you may get excited, like, oh, wow, this big client is talking to me. Wow, it's close to a sale. But sometimes when they know that they're way bigger than you, they can really bully you.
Yeah.
And in desperation, I mean, in entrepreneurship, like, you don't have thousands of options, right? So there is a little bit of like that kind of sense that, oh gosh, I really need to make a sale. So Sometimes you can agree to things which you regret later on. But I think sometimes it's like knowing, okay, this is how much I can do. Like, there, because, yeah, I mean, sometimes this one client had us, they wanted to do us to sign up for some programs which are going to cost us some 30 or $40,000 a year just in maintenance charges. And it was some program that was just specific for them, not something that we could use for other clients. And then we were like, wait a second, it's like that's such a big expense for us. It's like, are you willing to sign a contract where you're going to guarantee us certain sales? They're like, no, there's no guarantee for sales. Like, you just have to do this. If you want to work with us, you have to do this. And sometimes they really bully small companies. So it's just like, yeah, it's
Because they
hard.
know that you need to keep the lights on, and I'm
Exactly.
empathetic to that, right?
Yeah.
When my business was starting off, I would take on just about anyone and everyone.
Right.
Because I was still trying to figure out what my zone of genius was,
Yeah.
but just needed to generate some income, need to generate some cash,
Exactly. Yeah.
and that's to me that's one of the primary goals that I have with this show is how can we get to a point where you're not desperate, you can actually make that decision, Krishna.
Right.
You can make that decision to say, not the right fit. You're
Yeah.
not the right fit. We appreciate it. Great. Not the right fit.
Yeah.
When you can get to that point, then the shoe's on the other foot.
Right. Then
Now you
it
have the
makes
leverage.
you have the leverage. And there's always a risk that if you try to push back too much, they'll just go away. Sometimes you I mean, I have lost deals also. It's like, can't do anything about it. Just say, like, okay, I know what my values are, what my boundaries are. I want somebody like that. And especially initially when you get a big client, right? They're always like, listen, you're new in this industry. I've been in this industry for 30 years. Like, you better listen to what I'm saying. Like, like every company in this industry is going to ask for all these things. You better like agree to this. Initially you're like, I mean, as an entrepreneur, when you're starting off, you're like, oh, okay, maybe they're right, like, but then over experience I've realized that, oh, this company is just bluffing. Like, I've worked with a different company, same size, they're not asking for any of these things. And that's what it made me realize that, it's like never assume that what somebody says how things are is what how everyone else thinks about, like it's each company can be so different. And I would never say like, oh, just because a company is like $1 billion that they all think and operate the same way. I think there are a lot of differences. And I think with experience, I've started to learn, okay, like, I know this company is just bluffing, like I don't have to do this. So yeah.
Yeah. Are you part of a mastermind, Krishna, or like a small group of other business owners that talk a lot?
Yeah, I am. So it's just like an informal group of like entrepreneurs. I joined some local thing here in Boston, and I was just like, it's just an informal thing where we kind of like bounce ideas off of each other, and
That
we
helps. It helps you to
it
figure out
does. It
what you don't
does.
know, right?
Massively. Like one of the things I learned from this group is initially when I was starting off, I was just like, okay, everything is about keeping costs low. Let me just go for the cheapest in everything. If I'm going to hire a lawyer, I'm going to go for the cheapest lawyer. If I'm hiring a accountant, go for the cheapest. And then I realized that, oh my gosh, that's a horrible strategy because the cheaper they are, that means they're less experienced and they leave more loopholes open. And so to correct the mistakes that these, you know, somebody who is more low cost makes, I had to eventually hire somebody more expensive. And then I realized that you pay what you get for, like, and I think it's certain things it's better to pay more and get high quality service and have a proper thing in place instead of going with somebody cheap and then getting into all sorts of trouble with it.
Yeah. 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 I couldn't agree more. And that's again goes back to value-based pricing. You get what you pay for. And when you're starting
Exactly.
out, you might not have enough. You gotta bootstrap it to an extent. But our goal here is get more leverage, get more flexibility, surround yourself with the right people,
Right.
and be in a place where you can actually afford to pay a little bit more for better because it starts to snowball.
Yeah.
Krishna, we're gonna get into the rapid fire section of the show, so get ready, buckle up.
Oh,
It's gonna
okay.
get intense.
That
Put
was a
on your
surprise to me. Okay, rapid
yeah.
fire.
This is the
Let's do
rapid
it.
fire, baby. This is where things get hairy. Before I get
All
into
right.
that, though, Krishna, where's the best place for us to find you online?
So the best place is to go to my LinkedIn account, I would say. That's the easiest way to get in touch with me. Or you could also go to our website, which is www.karallief.com.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dogs and cats, I'm going to make it easy for you.
Dogs and
I'm going to put a link right down there. There's a link right there. You can click it. Connect with Krishna. All right, cool. Krishna, rapid fire. You ready?
Let's do it.
Let's go. Krishna, what is the scariest movie you have ever seen?
Ooh, I don't know. One of the scary movie series. I think like the first one. I think I saw when I was a kid. When I was just like, oh, everything looks so scary. Like
Yeah, I tell you, the silliest things are scary when you're 10 years old.
Yeah.
If you could live anywhere in the world, where would you live?
Ooh. I think I would live where I'm living right now. It's amazing because I live in a place where just so many interesting people from around the world. There's so much of research in healthcare, and it's like Boston is like a big city with a small city feel to it. So it's a very livable place, and I love it here. Yeah.
That's a great answer. If you could be any animal, what kind of animal would you be?
Ooh. I would be like some kind of a bird. I think like in maybe like I don't know, some kind of a bird because I kind of like to see things from a broader perspective, kind of like, oh, what are the overall trends that are happening in the world? I'm very big picture, so I would say, yeah, some kind of a friendly bird. Let's just say like a friendly bird, not like an eagle or something intense like that, but something more
Like a
friendly.
parrot, maybe? Parrots?
Oh, maybe. Why not?
Anyway, we're flying, baby. We're flying.
We're flying,
regardless.
yeah.
We're flying. Where are you going to be at professionally in 10 years?
Oh, wow. I would say like continuing to like I mean, we've already have like so many interesting discussions with clients from all over the world, but I think going even more global, right? Having customers just everywhere and having like an established brand everywhere. And I think running a successful company and having like a big team of people, having a big army of like, scientists and salespeople and making it big, right, on a grand scale and really goes back to my earlier point of wanting to make an impact on a global scale. And I think something along those fronts. And for me personally, I want to be the voice in the industry which is going to make a difference in this industry because I think supplements have such a questionable reputation right now, and it pains me to see that. And because supplements are good products, these are safe products, these are effective products which you can take for a long term. And I really want to be that voice in the industry that's going to raise the reputation of these products and get more people to try out these products because I feel there's so much of hesitation. And to me, I'm just like, why are you hesitating? These are good products. These are products that you eat every day.
I like that. Be a voice for the industry. I like that. That's a really good one, Krishna.
Be a voice for change,
Yeah, baby. Are NFTs underrated or overrated?
Oof, I don't know much about NFTs. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to comment on that.
Oh, you got to give me an overrated, underrated. What do you think?
Well, I don't know much about it, so I don't really have any comment. So I would probably go like overrated if I have to speak, but I don't have any knowledge about it. Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. At least you didn't plead the fifth. I like to get some answer. All right. If
Oh,
you
you're
could
gonna
sit
quote
next-
me. You're gonna quote me somewhere. No, you can't do that.
Oh yeah, you're good. It's going everywhere. Krishna
Oh, no.
Rajendran says NFTs are overrated, and I could tell you're probably thinking to myself, my friends are going to watch this. They're going to listen to
They're
this.
gonna think
figure it
I'm
out later. Under the scope. All right, final question for you here, Krishna. If you had 10 seconds with yourself 10 years ago, what would you say?
I would say like have an open mindset to everything in life. Be flexible, be open-minded, and be ready to change. I think the world is constantly changing, and I think the people who get left behind are the ones who are very set in their way, saying this is how my life should be. This is what works, this is what doesn't work. I think I used to be that way 10 years ago, like very focused, saying, okay, this is how life should work. And I've I failed so much, I would say, in the last 10 years that I've just like, okay, I think a better approach is to be flexible and open minded and take every day as it comes and never stop learning. I think like just learning is so important. So, I do daily journaling every day. Like I have a diary where I kind of write my thoughts for the day. Okay, this is what went well, this is what didn't go well. And then I analyze patterns over a period of time to see my own blind spots, to see things that I'm missing out on. And that makes a big difference for me.
Love it. If there's ever a time to be flexible and adjust, this is the time. So, Krishna, thanks so much for joining the show here today, brother.
Oh, thanks so much, Mark.
Boom. Mic drop there. Thanks for listening to the show today. Stay nimble. Continue to take action, please, ladies and gentlemen. If we're going to be successful now, you got to keep taking action. And, Krishna talked about this a little bit in the episode, but, failure seems scary, but it's generally not going to be that bad. Just keep taking action, keep trying new things, keep listening to your customers, and I know that you're going to be wildly successful. Thanks for being here again. Make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't, and I will catch you next time on After Hours Entrepreneur. See you next time, Action Taker. Peace.